You are telling me that after 8 years of hard work, this is how it ends? My voice was very calm, but inside, my heart was racing. I looked across the polished glass table of the main conference room. Sitting opposite me was Robert Vance. He was 32 years old, wore an expensive custom suit, and held a fancy business degree. He was also the founder's nephew. Robert did not look me in the eye. Instead, he reached into his folder and slid a tiny piece of paper across the table. It was a receipt from a local deli down the street. The total amount on it was exactly $15.42. It was a lunch receipt. "The company policy is completely clear, Mary," Robert said. He made sure to raise his voice so it would pass right through the glass walls. "We have a zero-tolerance rule for unauthorized expenses. Taking company money for personal meals is stealing from the firm. My name is Mary Johnson. At 46 years old, I was the Senior Logistics Operations Director for Vanguard Logistics." I looked past Robert's shoulder out into the open-plan office. My entire team was standing there, pretending to look at their screens but actually watching us. They could hear every single word. Robert called me outdated. He called me careless. He called me dishonest in front of everyone I managed. He did not want to hear the truth about that lunch. He just wanted a reason to destroy my name. Then, he slid a white envelope toward me. It was a termination letter. It stated that I was being fired immediately for cause, meaning I would not receive a single dollar of severance pay. A sharp wave of shock hit my chest, followed by a deep sense of betrayal. I realized right then that Robert did not care about a $15 lunch. He was using this tiny, pre-approved receipt as a legal weapon to push me out of the company without paying me a dime. He wanted me gone. And he wanted it done cheaply. I did not scream, and I did not cry. I stood up, walked back to my desk, and began to quietly pack my things into a small cardboard box. While I was wrapping a picture frame of my daughter, Robert walked out to the middle of the floor. He called the whole office over. In a loud, proud voice, he announced that Vanguard Logistics was finally cleaning out its old habits to make room for a brighter, more efficient future. He looked right at me as he said old habits. My team looked down at their shoes, too afraid to make eye contact with me. I taped my box shut, took a deep breath, and walked toward the elevators with my head held high. 8 years of my life. Gone in less than 10 minutes over a lunch bill that he knew was completely legitimate. I looked down at my box, holding on to the only things I had left from this place. The elevator doors opened with a soft chime. I stepped inside, turned around, and watched the glass office fade away as the doors closed. I was completely alone, out of a job, and full of a cold, quiet anger that I had never felt before. To understand why a $15 lunch could lead to all this, you have to understand what my life looked like outside that office building. I am a single mother. For the past 4 years, my entire world had been focused on one goal, saving every extra dollar to put my daughter through her final year of college. On top of that, I still owed a very large amount of money on my home mortgage. Every single month, the bills arrived like clockwork, and my salary from Vanguard Logistics was the only thing keeping our lives afloat. If I lost my income, everything we had built would fall apart. That was why I had worked so hard for so long. For 8 years, I was the person who built the entire cold chain logistics infrastructure of Vanguard from the absolute ground up. When I first started, the company was just a small local delivery business with a few regular trucks. I transformed it into an enterprise system. I knew every truck driver by their first name. I knew the exact temperature settings for every single warehouse we rented across 5 states. Most importantly, I was the one who held the digital compliance keys that kept our shipping network operating legally. The original founder of the company, Robert's uncle, trusted me completely. He knew that I was the only person who could keep our largest and most valuable client happy. That client was Biomed Solutions, a multi-million-dollar pharmaceutical titan. They shipped sensitive, life-saving cancer medicines through our logistics network. This cargo was incredibly fragile. If those medicines got even a few degrees too warm or too cold during transit, the entire batch would be ruined. People would miss their treatments, and our company would face millions of dollars in damages. To protect these shipments, I had manually built a unique legacy routing system over the years. It was a special method that completely bypassed erratic state line inspection stations where cargo trucks often sat idling for hours in the hot sun. Instead, my system used smaller, certified country roads with trusted local checkpoints. It kept the medicine moving constantly and kept it cold. To the executives in the corporate suite, I was just a woman sitting at a desk looking at spreadsheets. But to the truck drivers and the clients, I was the engine room of Vanguard Logistics. I gave everything to this company. I routinely worked 60-hour weeks. I missed my daughter's high school graduation dinners, I ate cold meals at my desk at 9 o'clock at night, and I ignored the constant physical stress that left my shoulders permanently aching. I sacrificed my own health and my personal life because the old CEO had always promised me that my loyalty would be rewarded. My salary was $140,000 a year, and I earned every single penny of it by keeping our operation flawless. But everything changed 6 months ago. The old CEO fell ill and decided to retire. He handed the reins of the entire company over to his nephew, Robert. Robert didn't know anything about the real work of logistics. He had never spoken to a stranded driver at 2 a.m. during a blizzard. He only cared about looking smart in front of the board of directors. The very first week he took over, he looked at the company budget and saw my salary line. To an ambitious young Emba, a 46-year-old woman making $140,000 looked like an unnecessary expense that could easily be cut. He thought he could replace my 8 years of institutional knowledge with a cheaper alternative and take credit for saving the company money. He started looking for any tiny excuse to trap me and push me out of the door from the moment he arrived. I knew he was watching me, but I truly believed that my value and my track record would protect me. I was wrong. Robert didn't want excellence. He wanted total control. As I sat in my car in the quiet parking lot, looking at my box of office supplies, I finally accepted the truth. My years of sacrifice meant nothing to him. He only saw a number on a page, and he wanted that number gone no matter what it cost the stability of our operations. The trouble did not start with that tiny lunch receipt. It started 3 months ago when Robert hired a young man named William. William was 26 years old. He wore brightly colored socks, expensive shoes, and had a shiny new degree from a top business school. He had never spent a single night talking to a stranded truck driver on a dark highway, but Robert made him our new operations manager anyway. Immediately, everything changed. Robert began to slowly sideline me from the daily operations. I was left out of the important morning emails. I was no longer invited to the weekly strategy meetings. When I submitted my written warnings about the dangers of changing our logistics tracking software, Robert did not even reply. He just deleted them. The real tension exploded during a big Tuesday morning board meeting. William stood at the front of the conference room with a laser pointer and a digital slideshow. He pitched a new, unverified AI-driven scheduling system. He claimed this software would cut our transportation costs by 30% by completely automating all of our delivery truck routes. He smiled at the investors and said human dispatchers were a waste of company money. I sat quietly until he was finished, and then I calmly raised my hand. I spoke up in a professional voice. I explained to the room that our medical cargo with Biomed Solutions required constant human compliance overrides. I told them that state lines change their commercial inspection rules all the time based on local weather and local law enforcement checks. A computer algorithm would not know that a major bridge in Maryland was closed for emergency repairs. It would not know that a Southern Highway inspection station was backing up traffic for 6 hours. If our trucks stopped moving on the highway, the cooling batteries would die within hours, and the expensive medicine would spoil. Robert did not even let me finish my sentence. He slammed his hand flat on the table and cut me off in front of the entire board of directors and our top investors. He looked at me with pure disgust and told me that my manual methods were dinosaur thinking. He said I was holding the company back because I was simply afraid of modern technology. William stood by the screen and gave a small, polite smile. That was the exact moment I realized what was actually happening. Robert and William were working together to find any excuse to remove me from my position. They wanted William to take my title so they could show the board how much money they saved by cutting an experienced manager. The trap they used against me was incredibly small. 2 weeks before I was fired, a regional transport inspector flagged one of our refrigerated trucks at a state border checkpoint. The truck was carrying a critical, time-sensitive shipment of oncology medication for Biomed Solutions. There was a minor error on the driver's paperwork, and the inspector refused to let the truck pass. If that truck sat there under the hot sun, the cargo would be lost. I did not hesitate. I got into my car and drove 2 hours out to the border station on a Saturday morning. I spent 3 hours sitting with the inspector, going through our history, and manually correcting the paperwork error. Afterward, I bought him a $15 deli sandwich and a coffee from the shop across the street as a simple thank you for staying past his shift to help us. It was a standard industry practice. The old CEO had always approved these tiny field expenses because they kept our operations moving and saved us millions of dollars in penalties. I submitted the receipt into the system just like I always did, but Robert had been watching my expense reports like a hawk, looking for a mistake. He flagged that $15 receipt as an unauthorized personal expense. He claimed I was using company money to buy meals for people outside the firm. He used that small lunch to build a false case of financial dishonesty against me. They had their excuse, and they did not care that my $15 sandwich had saved a $4 million shipment of medicine. They did not care about the patients waiting for those treatments, or the long drive I took on my day off. To them, it was just a perfect trap to clear me out of the way so William could step into my shoes without any resistance. The walk to the exit felt longer than any mile I had ever traveled. 2 young security guards stood on either side of me as I carried my cardboard box toward the main elevators. Robert followed close behind us, as if he expected me to steal the office chairs on my way out. Just before we reached the elevator doors, he stepped in front of me and demanded that I hand over my corporate laptop and my personal field notebooks. I opened my box, took out the company laptop, and handed it to him without a word. But then he pointed at the thick, leather-bound notebooks sitting at the bottom of my bag. "Those belong to Vanguard Logistics," Robert said coldly. I looked him dead in the eye and kept my hand over the notebooks. Those books did not contain company code or stolen data. They contained 8 years of my own personal notes, the private cell phone numbers of hundreds of independent truck drivers, the personal emergency contacts for local warehouse managers across 5 states, and my handwritten logs of custom system override codes that I created to bypass server errors. I knew those numbers by heart anyway, but the physical books were mine. I bought them with my own money, and I wrote in them with my own hand. "These are my personal property, Robert," I said, keeping my voice perfectly flat and steady. "There is no company information in here, only my own notes." Robert mocked me one last time as the elevator doors began to slide open. He let out a short laugh and said, "Keep them then. It doesn't matter. The company will run much faster without your heavy feet dragging us down anyway." Welcome to the modern world, Mary. I stepped into the elevator, turned around, and watched the doors close on his smiling face. When I walked out into the parking lot at exactly 4 p.m., the summer air was thick and hot. I sat inside my car, placed the cardboard box on the passenger seat, and stared at the steering wheel. For the first 10 minutes, a wave of pure financial terror hit me. I thought about my daughter's upcoming college tuition payment. I thought about the heavy monthly mortgage bill for my house. I felt a tight knot forming in my throat, and my eyes began to sting with tears. But then, a strange thing happened. A cold, quiet clarity washed over me. I looked up at the glass windows of the 3rd floor where my old office sat. I realized that for 8 years, I had been the glue holding that entire unstable operation together. I had spent my nights and weekends protecting a group of ungrateful people who did not value my labor or my respect. I started my car engine, put it in drive, and made a firm promise to myself. I would not call anyone. I would not offer to help them train William. I would not leave a single instruction note. I would simply let their new automated system face the harsh reality of the real world without my invisible labor to protect it. They wanted a modern company that ran automatically on computers and algorithms, so that is exactly what they were going to get. I was taking my institutional knowledge, my field relationships, and my quiet dedication home with me. From this moment on, they were entirely on their own. I drove away into the afternoon traffic, leaving Vanguard Logistics completely vulnerable to its own corporate arrogance. The silence in my house was the first thing I noticed. By 9 p.m. That evening, I was sitting at my kitchen counter with a hot cup of tea, watching the dark rain begin to fall outside. After 8 years of constant phone calls, text messages, and late-night emergency emails, the quiet felt completely strange. But it did not last long. At exactly 9:14 p.m., my personal cell phone began to vibrate against the hard wood of the counter. The screen lit up with William's name. I did not pick it up. I simply turned the phone face down. A minute later, it buzzed again. This time, it was Robert. I ignored that call too. Even though my corporate network access had been completely cut off by human resources, I was still receiving automated client shipping alerts on my personal email. Years ago, I had set up the company's secondary backup notification system using my private address just in case the main office servers ever went offline. They had forgotten to remove that backup link. I opened my personal laptop on the counter and watched the tracking data come in. The consequences of my firing were unfolding much faster than I ever expected. William had wasted no time at all. The moment security escorted me out of the building at 4 p.m., William had officially activated his new AI-driven routing software to prove to Robert how efficient he was. He wanted to show immediate results. But the real world does not care about a software developer's perfect code. A massive, unseasonal summer storm had just slammed right into the Mid-Atlantic transportation corridor. Heavy rain and high winds had forced local state authorities to completely close 2 major highway loops in Delaware and Maryland. A computer algorithm only knows how to follow fixed pre-programmed rules. It cannot reason. When the AI software hit the digital wall of the highway closures, it did not know how to handle the emergency. It began rerouting our delivery trucks randomly to keep them moving. 3 of our largest transport vehicles were currently out on the road in the middle of that storm. They were carrying a massive, critical shipment of temperature-sensitive oncology medication for Biomed Solutions. The total value of that pharmaceutical cargo was exactly $4 million. Because the software got confused by the blocked highways, it automatically redirected all 3 trucks to an old commercial holding facility in rural Delaware. The AI system thought it was simply saving mileage and avoiding traffic, but it had no idea that the local facility lacked any temperature-controlled loading docks or backup power links. The expensive medicine was now sitting in the middle of a major storm inside trailers that were slowly losing their cooling power as the truck engines idled. William was clearly in a state of total panic back at the office. I could see the system sending out automatic warning pings every 2 minutes. William did not have the personal cell phone numbers of the local warehouse managers in Delaware to get the building opened manually after hours. He did not know the owners of the independent towing companies who could bring emergency mobile generators to the trucks to keep the cooling units running. Those numbers were never entered into the main company database because the independent local drivers only worked with people they knew and trusted. Those numbers were sitting right inside my leather-bound notebooks on my kitchen table, and the operational knowledge was locked safely inside my mind. I took a slow, warm sip of my tea, feeling a deep, quiet sense of satisfaction wash over me. For months, Robert had told me that anyone could do my job. Now, he was about to find out exactly what it cost to replace a decade of human experience with a cheap computer program. By 1:30 a.m., the storm outside my own bedroom window was howling loudly, but the storm inside the Vanguard Logistics office was clearly much worse. My phone had vibrated so many times that the battery was nearly dead. Robert had called my personal line directly 6 times in the last 20 minutes alone. Finally, on the 7th call, I picked up the receiver and placed it calmly to my ear. I did not say hello. I did not give him the satisfaction of hearing anger in my voice. I just waited in complete silence. "Mary? Mary, thank goodness you finally answered." Robert's voice cracked loudly through the speaker. The arrogant, polished tone he had used in the glass conference room earlier that afternoon was completely gone. He sounded breathless, terrified, and completely defeated. I could hear loud shouting in the background. "Mary, we have a catastrophic situation here. The Biomed Solutions shipment is completely stranded in rural Delaware. The automated system is locked out, and the automated client alarms are going off on the main dashboard. Sarah Jenkins from Biomed just called my personal line, and she is absolutely losing her mind. I need you to log into the remote server right now and use your administrator compliance keys to bypass the system override. The trailers are losing temperature fast, and the medicine will be ruined in an hour." I leaned back against my kitchen chair, my voice remaining perfectly flat, steady, and calm. "I cannot do that for you, Robert," I replied smoothly. "As you reminded me at 4 o'clock today in front of my entire team, I am an outdated dinosaur who stole $15.42 from the company. You wiped my corporate access, you escorted me out of the building with security guards, and you fired me for cause. I no longer work for Vanguard Logistics. I am just a private citizen sitting at home." Robert cleared his throat loudly, trying to use his corporate authority one last time to scare me. "Listen to me, Mary. If those cancer medications spoil, the direct product loss is $4 million. We will be sued into absolute bankruptcy by the suppliers. I will personally see to it that the company holds you legally responsible for sabotaging our operations if you do not help us fix this server lock right now." I let out a soft, short laugh. It was the first time I had smiled all day. "Robert, let's be very clear about the facts. This isn't sabotage. This is just your own ignorance of how this business works. Expiring digital compliance keys are a standard security feature that I manually renewed on the 1st of every single month for 8 years to protect the client data from outside hackers. I warned you in writing 3 times that the new software would trigger an automatic security lock if the trucks deviated from the certified government routes. You deleted my warnings. You told me it was dinosaur thinking. You wanted a modern system, and now you have one. Enjoy it." There was a long, heavy silence on the other end of the line. I could hear William in the background, frantically typing on a keyboard and shouting that the trailer temperatures were rising into the danger zone. Robert's tone changed instantly from angry threats to desperate pleading. His voice was shaking. "Please, Mary. I'm sorry. I made a mistake. I will pay for the $15 lunch myself out of my own pocket right now. Just give William the override codes so we can save the contract and protect the cargo. I looked at my leather notebook sitting on the table in front of me. The price of my time has gone up significantly since 4 o'clock this afternoon, Robert, I said quietly. Good luck with your modern world. I hung up the phone, turned the power completely off, and walked upstairs to get a good night's sleep for the first time in years. When my alarm went off at 7 a.m. The next morning, the sun was shining brightly through my bedroom window. The fierce storm had completely passed over the city, leaving the sky clear and blue. But for Vanguard Logistics, the real destruction was only just beginning. I walked down to the kitchen, made a fresh pot of coffee, and finally switched the power back on my personal cell phone. Within less than 3 minutes, the device began to ring loudly in my hand. The caller identification screen did not show Robert's name, and it did not show William's name. It showed the full name of Sarah Jenkins, the Global Vice President of Biomed Solutions. Sarah was a serious, highly respected executive who had known and trusted my work for over 7 years. I picked up the phone immediately and placed it to my ear. "Mary," Sarah said, her voice taut with a dangerous mixture of anger and deep concern. "What on earth is happening over at Vanguard Logistics? I have been awake since midnight dealing with a complete disaster. 3 of our critical oncology shipments are currently sitting in a regular commercial warehouse in rural Delaware with completely broken cooling systems. $4 million worth of life-saving medical cargo is entirely spoiled and useless." When I frantically called Robert in the middle of the night, he tried to blame a temporary software glitch and the regional storm. "I know how you run operations, Mary, and I know you always have a backup plan. I want the real story directly from you." I took a slow, deep breath and spoke in a perfectly calm, professional, and composed voice. "The real story is very simple, Sarah," I replied. "Yesterday afternoon at exactly 4 o'clock, Robert fired me on the spot. He publicly accused me of financial dishonesty and violating company expense policies over a $15.42 lunch receipt. It was the deli receipt from 2 weeks ago when I drove out to the state border on a Saturday morning to help our transport inspector manually fix a paperwork error for one of your shipments." There was a sudden, sharp intake of breath on the other end of the line. Sarah was completely silent for 5 long seconds. I could hear her tapping her pen against her desk. When she finally spoke again, her voice had dropped to a freezing, dangerously quiet tone. "He fired you over a $15 operational lunch? The exact lunch that saved our $4 million cargo last month?" she asked. "Yes," I said quietly. And because they wanted to prove how efficient their new management style was, William immediately turned on an unverified automated routing system without renewing the manual compliance keys that I usually handled. I warned both of them in writing multiple times that the computer software would trigger an automatic security lock if the trucks deviated from the certified government routes during an emergency. They told me my thinking was outdated, and they deleted my warnings. Sarah let out a cold, sharp laugh. "They are absolute fools, Mary. They just destroyed a 7-year partnership because they wanted to save pennies on a senior manager's salary. They have no idea how the real world works." Within 2 hours of that phone call, Biomed Solutions issued an official, legally binding corporate notice to Vanguard Logistics. They were terminating their entire multi-million-dollar logistics contract immediately. The document cited gross managerial incompetence and a complete systemic failure to protect sensitive, life-saving medical cargo. The core financial foundation of Vanguard Logistics completely vanished in a single morning. The board of directors and the primary institutional investors were instantly alerted to the massive legal crisis. By 11 a.m., Robert and William were abruptly called into an emergency closed-door session with the company's original founders and angry shareholders. They had to sit in a room full of furious investors and explain exactly how a single afternoon without my invisible labor had cost the firm its largest and most important client. They had no answers. All of their expensive business degrees and flashy automated slides could not explain away a $4 million loss and a ruined corporate reputation. Robert's uncle, the original founder, reportedly threw a binder across the room when he realized that a $15 deli sandwich was the catalyst for the entire collapse. The polished facade they had built over the last 6 months was completely shattered by the harsh light of reality. 2 weeks after that fateful morning, the entire corporate landscape looked completely different. Vanguard Logistics was spiraling into absolute chaos, desperately trying to survive. To avoid filing for total bankruptcy after losing the massive Biomed Solutions account, the company had to undergo a painful, sweeping corporate restructuring. Robert's uncle, the original founder, came out of his retirement just long enough to completely clean house. He stripped Robert of his executive title, took away his company shares, and quietly removed him from the organization entirely, effectively ruining Robert's professional reputation in the logistics industry forever. William was fired on the exact same day for gross operational negligence and a complete failure to maintain system compliance. He was left with a useless degree and a black mark on his resume. On a quiet Tuesday afternoon, a shiny black town car pulled up to the front of my house. A senior board member from Vanguard, a man who had known and respected me for years, walked slowly up my driveway. He handed me a formal stamped letter. The board of directors was officially offering me my old job back. But this time, the terms were wildly different. They were offering to double my previous salary to exactly $280,000 a year. They added a $50,000 signing bonus, and they offered to hand me full, unrestricted management control over the entire logistics and operations division. They were desperately begging me to return and fix the complex machine I had spent 8 years building from scratch. I looked at the letter in my hands, then looked up at the tired board member and calmly declined the offer. I smiled gently at him and told him that the true price of respect could never be bought with a delayed bonus or a desperate raise. I then revealed a secret that completely shocked him. Sarah Jenkins had already called me the day after the disaster unfolded. Biomed Solutions had created a brand new, premium position specifically designed for me. I was now their internal global logistics director. Instead of managing the trucks for Vanguard, I was now the primary client who handed out the multi-million-dollar shipping contracts to companies that actually knew how to respect their workers. My daughter's final year of university tuition was now completely secure, and my home mortgage would be paid off years ahead of schedule. As I watched the black car drive away from my house, I sat on my front porch and held my old leather-bound field notebooks. I reflected on the final, powerful lesson of this long journey. Many weak authority figures think they completely own the building just because someone handed them the keys to the front door. But they have absolutely no idea who actually laid the physical bricks, who poured the concrete foundation, or who keeps the lights running while they sleep. True value is completely invisible to arrogant people, right up until the moment it is gone forever, and they are left standing completely alone inside the smoking ruins of their own disrespect.